Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you to Jesse and the Tanakh Study Center for organizing this day and giving us all a chance to spend the day studying Torah and teaching. It makes it much easier thinking about what I'm about to say rather than about the fast. And today I'd like to think about two historical figures that lived at the same time, but I'm not sure if they ever met each other. And these are Josephus and Rabbi Yohanan Ben Zakai. They were both important Jews, important leaders. Josephus was at first a general in the army against the Romans up in the north. And then he went over and joined the Romans and became the court historian, and that's what he did for the rest of his life. And thanks to him, we have a multi-volume history of all the details of everything that happened during that time period and before. Rabbi Yohanan Ben Zakai, on the other hand, is a leading spiritual figure, teacher, halachist, and he's also involved in the siege in Jerusalem in the south. He's in the walls of Jerusalem, and he wants to make peace, so that's something they have in common. Josephus and Rabbi Yohanan Ben Zakai both want to make peace with the Romans, and they're both leaders, but in different ways. And that's not clear that they ever met each other or knew each other. But still, there are many important similarities, but also differences between them. Thinking about them together, I think of famous pictures of Rabbi Yosef meeting with Bibi or whatever prime minister, and sitting together. And on the one hand, they're both thinking about the state of Israel and the future of the Jewish people, and they have overlapping concerns, but yet they're each also very different people. So, thinking about the difference between these two, I'd like to draw your attention to the quote on top of the page. This is from a famous book called Zachor. Anybody's read this book? Zachor by Yosef Chaim Yerushalmi. It's a classic. He was a professor of Jewish history at Columbia University, and he also went to YU and was ordained as a rabbi and served as a rabbi for a number of years. And having those two roles led him to write this book called Zachor, in which he thinks about what does it mean to write Jewish history. If you look at the Bet Midrash and all the books that we have from Chazal, the rabbis never wrote history, which is strange. Josephus writes his history. He's a Hellenized Jew because Greeks invented the writing of history. Not sure if Josephus would rise to the standards of today. He doesn't have a lot of footnotes. Wasn't published by an academic press, but still, he gives details. Whereas the rabbis, even though they're very concerned about the past, they different mitzvot about zachor, about remembering, yet they don't write anything and don't write any history. And perhaps it's because, for them, the past is so relevant to them that it's not even past. That the things that happened way back, centuries ago, are as if they're happening right now. They're reliving it. You could think of the Passover Haggadah. If God didn't take us out of Egypt, we would still be slaves there, right? And so you could look at the quote here at the top. This is ironically, the very absence of historical writing among the rabbis may itself have been due, in good measure, to their total and unqualified absorption of the biblical interpretation of history. In its ensemble, the biblical records seemed capable of illuminating every further historical contingency. In other words, all they need to know is Tanakh, and everything else that happens in the future of the Jewish nation is just a repeat of something that already happened in Tanakh. And so if they want to know what happened and what to do, just refer to one of the stories there. And so if we're being persecuted, we'll rethink persecution in Egypt, or under Ashur, or under Bavel. And so history has a cyclical aspect to it. And this leads, therefore, to a different view of history, whereas Josephus is writing in detail names and places and dates and exact stories. For the rabbis, this day today that we're fasting is summarized in one Mishnah. There are 5 things that happened on this day, on the 17th of Tammuz. Nishtabiru haluchot. The luchot that Moshe brought down were smashed. Batel tamid. They needed to stop bringing the regular sacrifice when Jerusalem was under siege. Vehob ke'ah ha'ir, and the walls of the city were breached. That's the main thing we think about. V'saraf apostemos et Torah. Torah was burned during a persecution. Ve'amid selem b'hechal, and the Bet HaMikdash was turned into a pagan temple with an idol. So a number of different items. Some of them have more historical basis, some less. We don't have evidence for the dates and times and exact details of a lot of these things, but it doesn't matter because the difference here between history and memory. And so memory means our lived thought about things that happened in the past. The stories, the legends, the holidays, the commemorations, and something that we can tell a kid, you can tell an adult, and we all share in that experience together. Whereas history is all the details that's good for someone who wants to sit and read a lot about all that. And so that's one of the, I think, the key differences here between Josephus and Rabbi Yohanan Ben Zakai about actually the way they would approach their past and use their past towards to thinking about their current day. So I'd like to look at an example of precisely this, because even though today we have a state of Israel and we're thinking about comparisons to 2,000 years ago, already 2,000 years ago there was an ancient history that went back 1,000 years before them. And so when they're under siege under the Romans, right, they're thinking about things that happened 800 years before them as a model for what they could do. It's amazing how long our history is, that even for ancient historians, they also had history. Now, I always think about how Jewish history becomes harder and harder every year, because there's more to learn. 2,000 years ago, there was much less. Okay. So let's look at an example in detail. And we're going to eventually get to the story of Yohanan Ben Zakai escaping from the walls of Jerusalem. But that story makes reference to the siege under Assyria, under Ashur. So let's take a few minutes and look at the sources from Tanakh. They're from Sefer Yeshayahu. There's parallels in Sefer Melachim as well. And understand that historical context and those texts. And then, when we move to the Talmud, as it tells us about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai, we'll be in a good place to understand exactly what they're making reference to. Okay, so a couple of dates up at the top. 722 BCE is when Ashur, led by Shalmaneser the fifth, destroyed the northern kingdom. Right, he came down. He took over the entire Middle East on his way. That's what he was up to in 722. He destroyed all the northern, the 10 tribes. What happened to those 10 tribes? People say they're lost. They weren't really lost. They many of them actually came down south. They fled and joined the south, and some of the towns in between kind of were absorbed by the south. Some of them were sent into exile. Most of them actually stayed up in the north and became something like the Shomronim, the Samaritans that we know of today, until today. So the north is gone. And Assyria is not going to stop there. They're going to keep going, right, and take over the entirety of Israel. And sure enough, in 701 BCE, under King Chizkiyahu, they go down and they capture many of the cities in the south, like Lachish. If anyone's been to the British Museum, you can actually see depictions on the walls that Ashur made of the siege of Lachish, and you can see the brutality of it, also the ingenuity. The brutality is putting people on metal spikes. The ingenuity is to take over a siege, they would make ramps, and then they had kind of tanks, these metal things on wheels that they would wheel up the ramp right up to the wall. Inside the wall, they're throwing missiles. You can see they're flaming balls of I don't know whatever they were made out of. And throwing them at the tanks and at the soldiers with their shields. And then here's the great ingenuity. You can see this on these ancient inscriptions. From inside the tank, the guy has a ladle full of water that he brings outside and is pouring on top of the arrow of the tank because it was on fire. Right? Because the people inside throw these missiles set on fire, so there's a ladle to put out the fires in the front of the tank. It's amazing. Okay, so that was the state of warfare, and so that's that historical Lachish. That whole city was destroyed, and after that they came and besieged Jerusalem in 701 BCE. So, if you were reading the paper back then, I'm sure they would have predicted Jerusalem is going to fall imminently. Okay, so that's where we are. And now we're going to compare those events to the events that happened much later. In 67 CE, Vespasian, who's just a general, takes the north, including a city called Jotapata. That's where Josephus was a general. They destroy the north, and then they come down south. In 69 CE, Vespasian is declared the emperor, and so they pause their attacks because Vespasian has to go back to Rome to be declared the emperor, and he appoints his son Titus to take over the war, and then Titus makes the siege in 70 CE and destroys the Bet HaMikdash in that year. So already you see a parallel between these two stories, right? This starts in the north is destroyed, then they come down south and make a siege. The siege is, in both cases, we'll see, is stopped in the middle. In the case of Ashur, they never come back. In the case of Rome, they do come back. Okay. So let's read some of the text together. Vahi ב-14 shana למלך חזקיהו עלה סנחריב מלך אשור על כל ערי יהודה הבצורות ויתפסם. So it's the 14th year of King Chizkiah, which lands at 701. Sancheriv, and now different, not Shalmaneser, but the next king, marches against the fortified towns in Judea and takes them. וישלח מלך אשור רב שקר מלך איש ירושלימה אל המלך חזקיהו בחיל כבד ויעמוד בתלת הברכה העליונה במסילת שדה חובס. And so he wants to send a message to scare them, and so he sends Rav Shakeh. Shakeh, lashkot means the wine, like Sad HaMashkim, but he doesn't just pour the wine, he's the chief of staff of the king. And so he sends Rav Shakeh from Lachish, where they just won that battle, or they're in the middle of that battle, to Jerusalem, to Chizkiah with a big army. And the purpose of this army is to show their great force. They're not about to fight just yet, but he wants to send them a message. And he stands at the upper pool. If you've been on a walking tour in the old city of Jerusalem, you probably stopped at this place. There's remnants of this wall from the first Bet HaMikdash, very fat wall. I don't know if you remember being there. It's very deep. It's deep down there, so you can actually see. You're standing on a balcony, and you look over it, and any tour guide will say, "Here's the spot exactly where Rav Shakeh came, and he was speaking from outside the wall to the people inside the wall." I don't know if it's the exact spot, but that is the original wall. Okay. ויצא אליו אליקים בן חלקיהו אשר על הבית ושבנה סופר ויואח בן אסף המזכיר. So obviously Rav Shakeh wanted to have an audience with the king, with Chizkiah, but Chizkiah didn't want to go and meet him. So he sends 3 of his officers, and one of them is going to be very important. So first is Eliakim ben Chilkiyahu. He's in charge of the house. Shevna, he's the important guy. Shevna is called the scribe HaSofer. In other texts, the same name comes up as Shevanyahu. So Shevna might be a shortened Aramaic form of Shevanyahu. And also Yoach. ויאמר עליהם רב שקה אמרו עלי חזקיהו כה אמר המלך הגדול מלך אשור מה ביטחון הזה אשר בטחת. I have a message from you from the king of Assyria. What are you relying on? What kind of security do you have? אמרתי אך דבר שפתיים עשה וגבורה למלחמה אתה על מי בטחת כי מרדת בי. What, do you think that mere counsel makes valor for war? Just talking and saying, yeah, we're going to win? Right? When you have nothing to rely on? Right? What are you relying on? On Egypt? This parallel in Sefer Melachim says, instead of Amarti, says Amarta. You think that mere words makes for war. הנה בטחתי על משענת הקנה רצות הזה על מצרים אשר ישמח איש עליו ובא בכפו ונקבה כן פרעה מלך מצרים לכל הבוטחים עליו. You're relying on Paro, this imagery to an elderly man with a walking stick, but if the walking stick breaks, and instead of holding him up, just makes a hole in his palm. That's what it's like relying on Egypt. They're never going to come help you. They're only going to hurt you. V'chi tomar elai el Adonai Eloheinu batachnu. Halahu asher hesir Chizkiyahu bet bamotav et mizbechotav vayomer liYehuda v'Yerushalayim lifnei hamizbech hazeh tishtachavu. This is amazing because we have the Tanakh quoting Rav Shakeh, who himself is getting into the minds of the Jews. He says, I know what you guys are thinking, and he's arguing with them not only in terms of military, but also theologically. He says, I know you think that God will come and save you, but Chizkiyahu, he just went and destroyed all of the altars and high places where you used to serve Hashem. Right? In fact, Yeshayahu did do this because, well, for a different reason. He said, we believe in one God, we're monotheists, and so God wants us to serve only in one place. And so he went and destroyed all those other places because they were used for a combination of Avodah Zarah and service of Hashem, and so he destroyed all those things. But in Rav Shakeh's reading, he's saying, that's where you served God. Chizkiyahu took those all away. God wouldn't be happy with that. Now he's going back to the military. He says, I'll give you 1,000 horses. If only you have riders for them. You don't even have riders for the horses. So you have nothing. How can you bother relying? How can you respond no to even a lower servant of the king of Assyria, and rely on Egypt for chariots and horsemen? You don't have any, right? They haven't given you any horsemen. Adonai amad elai ale la'aretz hazot v'hashchita. This is really amazing. Going back to the theological argument, it says, do you think I, king of Assyria, was able to come and conquer all the nations that I did, including the north, without Hashem's help? Hashem is on my side, not your side, right? Isn't it obvious? How would he know that? Why would he think that Hashem is on his side? Okay, there are facts on the ground. He's winning, right? He conquered the north. Also, maybe he consulted a sorcerer or magician, right? Like Balak and Balaam, and who said, yes, he's going to go over to your side. Or maybe from Yeshayahu himself. Yeshayahu in previous chapters, a number of places, and actually we're going to see one of them, Yeshayahu says, Hashem sent Ashur to come and punish you in the north, because of all your terrible actions, sins, the way you're treating each other, and so on. You need to be destroyed, and God's messenger is Ashur. So if they had heard that, then they would say, see, even your own prophet says that God is on our side. So the purpose of this, of Rav Shakeh announcing all this on the wall, is to demoralize them inside, right? They're going to be like, you know what? He has a point. There's no way we can win. God's not on our side. What are we doing here? ויאמר אליקים ושבניו יואח ואל רב שקד דבר נא לעבדיך ארמית כי שומעים אנחנו אל תדבר אלינו יהודית באוזני העם אשר על החומה. And then these three servants of the king say, can you stop speaking in Hebrew? It's amazing. The servant, the chief of staff of Ashur, was able to knew Hebrew. Stop speaking Hebrew. Speak Aramaic. Aramaic is the official language of the entire empire of the Assyrians. And so you'd expect them to come and speak Aramaic. He says, why? Because, and Rav Shakeh says, do you think I'm speaking? Yeah, I wonder if their point is, because there are other people that are listening, the soldiers or people walking around on the walls, and they can hear what you're saying. We don't want them to hear what you're saying. This is official government communication. So please speak to us in Aramaic. We know Aramaic, right? We are officials. And Rav Shakeh says, do you think that my message is to your master, to King Chizkiah? No, my message is actually to all the people on the wall. I want to demoralize the soldiers and everybody that's inside. And so now he's even more emboldened, and he yells out in Hebrew. It's not called Ivrit, Yehudit, right? The language of Yehuda. And he says, listen to the words of King of Ashur. Ko amar HaMelech al yasi lachem Chizkiyahu ki lo yuchal lehatzil etchem al yiftach etchem Chizkiyahu el Adonai lemor hatzel yasilenu Adonai lo tianten ha'il hazot biyad melech Ashur. Do not listen to Chizkiyahu who tells you that Hashem will be on our side and that we'll win, because this is what the king of Assyria says: make peace come out and you'll all be able to sit under your fig trees and your vines and drink from your cisterns. Just come out and make peace and life will be good. And then I may have to take you away from this land because I don't want you to rebel again. But I'll take you to another land that's equally nice and good and you'll have good lives, right? This is the original land for peace deal. And do not let Chizkiah mislead you by saying that God will save, Hashem will save us. Did any of the gods of any of the nations save them? You see that Rav Zaccai is in this polytheistic mode, that each territory has its own local god. None of them were around. And so, after he finished speaking, the three servants were silent because the king's orders were, don't answer him, don't start up with him, just listen. And so they came back and they tore their clothes and they reported to the king everything that Rav Zaccai had said. Chizkiah heard this. He tore his clothes, covered himself with sackcloth, went to the house of Hashem. He also sent Eliakim, who was in charge of the palace, and Shevna to the prophet Yeshayahu. So they wanted to know what to do. This is a good king. He turns to the prophet to know what's the right thing to do. This is what he said. And can you help us out? Maybe Yeshayahu, can you pray on our behalf? And maybe God will save us, especially when he hears of all the terrible things that Rav Zaccai said about us, about you, and hopefully you will help. And so they come to Yeshayahu, Pasuk Vav. ואומר להם ישעיה כה תאמרו אל אדוניכם כה אמר אדוני אל תירא מפני הדברים אשר שמעת אשר גידפו נערי מלך אשור אותי. He says, don't be afraid. God's message to Yeshayahu and to the Chizkiah is, don't be afraid of them. הנני נותן בו רוח ושמע שמועה ושב אל ארצו והפלתי בחרב בארצו. I'm about to send him a message. And the message is going to be, he needs to go back to his land and he's going to die in his own land. Right? The king of Ashur, he's not going to continue this war. And so, Vayashab Rav Zaccai vayimsa melech Ashur nilcham al libnai ki shama ki nasa Lachish. Rav Zaccai finished his job, and now he went back. They already finished destroying Lachish, so he went to a different place. Vayishma, and just then, there in fact was a message from Tirhaka melech Kush lemor yasa li lachem itach vayishma vayishlach melachim el Chizkiah lemor kotomerun el Chizkiah melech Yehuda lemor. Al Yashiacha Elohecha Asher Ata Boteach Bo Lemor Lo Tinaten Yishalayim Beyad Melech Ashur. So sure enough, the king of Egypt from Nubia starts a war on another front, and that's much more important to Ashur. He has to go and fight that war, and so he can't deal with this with Jerusalem anymore. And so he leaves. He was supposed to come from Lachish and would have come to Jerusalem to activate the war there, but instead he has to go and deal with the Egyptians. But now that they heard that, he sends a message to Chizkiah. Says, don't think that God saved you just because I'm stopping the fight here. I'll be back. Right? You have heard what the king of Ashur has done to all the other lands, and no one saved them, and so therefore, no one's going to save you either. Right? And don't think that this temporary relief is going to be something permanent. On top of the next page, we have the rest of the story. ויצא מלאך אדוני ויכה במחנה אשור 185,000 וישכימו בבוקר ונחולם פגרים מתים. And that night, an angel came out and struck 185,000 in this Syrian camp. They woke up in the morning and everybody was dead. According to Josephus, as he's summarizing this, he says that there was a plague that spread throughout their camp. So he gives a more naturalistic reading of it. Although even within Melachim, you see there's both, because there's another front, and so the king has to leave, and whatever forces remain there all died. And so sure enough, they made the right decision. Yeshayahu's advice was correct. Chizkiah's advice was correct, and they didn't need to worry about Rav Zaccai and the Assyrians, and they were saved. And in the meantime, Ashur fell, the Babylonians destroyed them, and the southern kingdom was able to survive for another over 100 years. Okay, so that's the story of Ashur. Mm-hmm.
There's a great book called The What Is History. You know this?
Yeah.
So it's mostly like the what if history books.
Right.
They're mostly like military history.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the first and second chapter is exactly
Right.
what he just taught by an Irish military to be one of the great
Right.
what ifs. of
Yeah,
human
amazing.
history.
Great.
Human history moving
Right.
forward.
Because there would have
Excellent.
never been a Judaism that I remember I heard. I
Yeah.
didn't read about
Yeah.
it.
How would they have-
Judaism,
how would they have survived
Christianity,
it?
Islam would never have survived. Because this is the last
Interesting.
stand.
Right. It's interesting to compare Yeshayahu to Yirmiyahu. Because Yirmiyahu, when he's dealing with the Babylonians, gives the opposite advice. He says, give in to the Babylonians. Do not fight them. Right? Surrender, and you will live. And the people don't want to. They want to fight. And here's the opposite. Chizkiah says, all the people want to give in, and because they're all scared, and he needs the prophet Yeshayahu to say, no, go and fight. So it's really interesting that two different prophets and kings at two different times give opposite advice, which is fine because they're two different historical situations, and it means that Ashur was a fight that they could win, it was worth fighting for, and they did win. Whereas Bavel was a fight that was not worth fighting, and they couldn't have won, and the destruction was worse because they did rebel. Right. So I think that's an important lesson in itself, that every situation needs its own analysis and its own answer. Good. Right. Exactly. Right. Again and again. It goes back to 1948 in May. There's a cabinet meeting, and they're deciding should they declare the state or not. Right. And it was very close. Okay. So source number 2 is actually an extra biblical source. This is Sancheriv's version of the story. This is written on a prism. Here's a picture of it. And he talks about all of his wars and lots of things, but particularly for this, he says, as for the king of Judah, Chizkiah, who had not submitted to my authority, I besieged and captured 46 of his fortified cities, along with many smaller towns taken in battle with my battering rams. I took as plunder 200,000 and 150 people, both small and great, male and female, along with a great number of animals, including horses, mules, donkeys, camels, oxen, and sheep. As for Chizkiah, I shut him up like a caged bird in his royal city of Jerusalem. I then constructed a series of fortresses around him, and I did not allow anyone to come out of the city gates. His towns, which I captured, I gave to the kings of Ashdod, Ekron, and Gaza. Okay, is this accurate? As I captured Chizkiah like a bird in a cage. He doesn't say that he killed him or that he destroyed the city.
He is under siege.
Right? That's true. They were under siege. But he leaves it there. So actually this is, I don't know about the numbers. Numbers are always exaggerated. But the Sancheriv's prism and Tanakh actually match up very well. Okay. So one more quote from Yeshayahu. This is going to be actually the main quote that we're going to see in the Talmud. And here, Yeshayahu, Israel was talking about before, Yeshayahu says that the king of Ashur is God's messenger. And he says, Hoy Ashur shevet api, umatehu beyadam za'ami. Ashur, you are my staff. If a father has to hit his kid with a staff, right? He uses a stick. So God needs to punish Bnei Israel, and the stick is Ashur. God sent Ashur. Begoy Chanef, right? I sent him an ungodly nation. I charged him with people, take its spoils. But this Ashur, he has an evil plan. His mind harbors evil designs. He wants to destroy, to wipe out nations, not a few, because he thinks, oh look, it's because of my captains. That's how I was able to conquer all these cities. Some Samaria, Damascus. Since I was able to achieve these, let me keep going to Jerusalem and Samaria. Shall I not do to Jerusalem what I did to the other idols? But when God has carried out his purpose on Mount Zion in Jerusalem, he will punish that pride and arrogance of Assyria. In other words, God is saying, Yeshayahu is saying that God said, yes, I did want you to punish certain people to a certain extent, but now you took it too far, right? You send someone to jail or whatever to be punished, and they need a certain punishment, but then the jailkeeper goes and tortures them. Right? I didn't ask you to do that. So I needed you to take care of the northern kingdom, maybe scare the southern kingdom, but you went too far, and therefore Ashur in turn will be destroyed. Right? In 15, does an axe boast over him who hews with it, or a saw magnify itself above him who wields it? The axe says, "Look how great I am! I knocked down the tree." No, the axe shouldn't say that. He should be happy that the lumberjack was able to be strong and use it, but he doesn't have any of its own power, and so too Hashem will destroy Ashur, and it'll be like a sick man who pines away. Let's turn the page over. All right, soon enough. Let's skip to the end. Last pasuk. Last two pasukim. Hine Adon Adonai Sebaot Mesaif Pura B'Ma'arasa V'Ramei Koma Gedorim V'Gebohim Yishpalu V'Nikaf Sibchei Hayar B'Barzel V'Halebanon V'Adir Yipol. And so God is going to chop off the tree crowns with an axe. And now again using that axe imagery. And so who's it referring to? Who are these tall trees that he's going to cut down? Ashur, right? Who make themselves haughty and say, "Look at all the great things that we can do." God is going to destroy those tall trees, and the thicket of the forest it will be hacked away. And here's the key to remember: Lebanon, be'adir yipol. Lebanon, the Lebanon trees. But there's a picture here of the Assyrians taking cedar trees from Lebanon. Lebanon's famous for cedar trees. Shlomo HaMelech also got them from there. So as he goes, he conquers Lebanon. Assyria is also right near there, and so Lebanon here is a symbol for Ashur because of their haughtiness, and they are going to be cut down. Be'adir. Who is the Adir? Or you could just say, like the translation, Lebanon trees will fall in their majesty, right? In their majesty. Or, Be'adir, here you could see how Rashi says it. Rashi says, Be'adir yipol al yedei malach yiplu. That God will send an angel to destroy them. Or, Davar acher, Be'adir b'zchut Chizkiyah. Shu adirim. Chizkiyah is the Adir, the great king that will destroy him. Or, Radak, Lebanon, Kelal Kol Atzeh Hayar, V'Amal Lebanon Shushem Yar, Yisrael, V'Davar Ketubah, Ve'Adir, Hu Malach HaMakeh Otam. So in other words, Adir is God, or God's messenger. God's messenger, maybe an angelic messenger, or through Chizkiyah. Okay? So the idea here is that Yeshayahu was saying, although at first God commissioned Ashur to be his rod to punish those who deserve punishments. It's true, but they went too far and they have to be stopped. And eventually, God will cut them down. And so the Lebanon represents Assyria. Adir Yipol means that God will cut down Assyria and they will fall. And the main message of Yeshayahu is: keep fighting. Do not give in to the king of Assyria. Do not make peace with them. And sure enough, they stand strong and they are able to survive. Okay, all that is the background. Now is the main story, which you've probably read many times, but I brought it to you in two versions, so we can see the differences between them. Let's look at Avot Rabbi Natan, is on the right, as an earlier version of the story, probably from like 400 CE, and Talmud Bavli from like 600 CE, a bit later. But both are talking about earlier times from the war in 70. Let's read from the right side first. Avot Rabbi Natan. When Vespasian came to destroy Jerusalem, he said to them, "You idiots! Why do you want to destroy the city, and why do you want to burn the temple? What do I want of you except that you send me one bow or one arrow, and I will go from here?" In other words, surrender. They would put a white flag, write on a note on a bow, "We surrender." Send it out, send the message out, and we'll know that you've surrendered. Then we'll leave you alone. Right? Why are you bothering to rebel? What are you going to gain from it? The Romans were different. The Romans didn't. It's different from Assyria. Syria wanted to destroy everything and take everything for their empire. Rome was already in charge, and the Jews were rebelling to gain independence. And so Vespasian says, I don't understand what you're doing. They said to him, just as we went forth against your two predecessors and killed them, so we will go forth against you and kill you. Who are the two predecessors? What happened is in 66, 4 years before this, there's a Roman general named Cestius Pius. He came to Jerusalem with the whole legion and surrounded it and scared them and said, don't rebel. Don't even think of rebelling, right? And then he left. On the way back, their headquarters was in Caesarea. On the way back, they had to go. One of the only ways to go is through a narrow pathway that has a cliff on both sides. And as they were passing through there, the Jews ambushed the Roman army and pushed them all down the mountain. And after that, the Romans said, well, we got to go and destroy this place. But for the Jews, they said, we won. See? They left. And probably the other one, maybe Florus, one of the Roman governors, who also left town. And so we've done this before, and we know you're here now, but we're going to stand strong and wait till you leave. So Yohanan ben Zaccai heard this. He sent for the men of Jerusalem and said to them, my sons, why are you destroying the city, and why do you want to burn the temple? What does he ask for you except one bow and one arrow? And he will go from you. So Yohanan ben Zaccai says, it makes sense what he's saying, right? This message from outside. It's right. You see the parallel to Assyria, the person from outside saying, stop fighting. And they said to him, just as we went forth against his predecessors, we're going to kill him also. Now Vespasian had men positioned within the walls of Jerusalem. They wrote down every single word that they heard on arrows and shot them beyond the wall, saying Yohanan ben Zaccai was among the friends of the emperor. Okay, they were spies. Vespasian had spies, and so they know Yohanan ben Zaccai is on the books that he likes them. Okay, let's go back to the Bavli story and compare it side by side. Abba Sikra, the head of the rebels of Jerusalem. Sikra is a Latin word. It means sikarai is a short dagger. These were the rebels, and wanted to fight against the Romans. And they would go around the streets, and anyone who was a peacenik, they would go and just stab him right under their cloak, right, and go away. And he's Abba Sikra. He's the head of the rebels. And so he was also the nephew of Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakai. They're always related. Everybody's related. And he said, come secretly to me, Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakai says. Abba Sikra came to him and said, until when do you want to do this, killing everybody with famine? Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakai says, what's your plan? We're losing. Abba Sikra said to him, you're right. What should I do? If I say anything, they will kill me. My own followers are terrorists. And if I tell them not to fight, then they'll kill me. So he's the head of the terrorists, but he's the follower. So Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakai said to him, make a plan that I can get out. Maybe we can save something a little bit. Abba Sikra said, let it be known that you are deathly, and everybody will come to you and take a stinking object to keep it by you, so that they will say that you have died, and let your students bear you, and let no other man bear you, so that none else may sense how light you are, because rebels know that a live man is lighter than a dead one. Yohanan ben Zakai did so. Rabbi Elazar carried him on one side, Rabbi Yeshua on the other side, and they came to the city entrance. The rebel guards wanted to pierce him. It says, let's see if, what do you got inside there? Let's see if he's really dead. Right? So this is the Jewish rebels. Want to make sure you're not taking out a live body. Abba Sikra said to him, look, the Romans are watching. They're going to say, look how they treat their rabbi. It's not very nice. They said, okay, fine, go. When they reached Vespasian, he says, peace to you, king, peace to you, king. He said to him, Vespasian says, you deserve death on 2 counts. First of all, I'm not king. So if you call me king, then you are rebelling against the person who is king, Nero. Second, if I am king, why did you not come to me until now? Right? In other words, you're supposed to make peace. Why don't you come earlier, right? And make a meeting with me. He said, as for what you said, I am not king. In truth, you are a king. Because if you were not a king, Jerusalem would not have been delivered in your hands, as it says, V'halevanon be'adir yipol. And mighty one refers to a king. As it says, mighty one shall come from the mist. And Lebanon refers to the temple. As it says, and that's his answer to the first thing. As for what you said wanted to come beforehand, the thugs among us would not let me. Okay, so first of all, he goes and calls him king when he's not yet king. He's about to become king, and he quotes a pasuk for him, which is really interesting. That that Vespasian is gonna knows enough Tanakh to appreciate this verse and the derasha that he's going to make on it. Okay, so but what pasuk does he quote? He quotes from Yeshayahu, and do you see how he turns it around? In his reading, when it says Lebanon, Be'adidi Paul, Lebanon refers to the Bet HaMikdash, not Assyria. And Adir then refers to Vespasian, right? So he takes the pasuk from Yeshayahu, when Yeshayahu said it, his point was, keep strong, right? Keep fighting, don't give up, because Lebanon, Ashur, is going to fall under us, under Adir. God is going to destroy him. And now, Rabbi Yohanan Ben Zakai is quoting that very same pasuk to him, to saying, you are the king, Vespasian, and you are going to destroy Lebanon. That's the Bet HaMikdash. Okay, so how could he do this, right? How do you take a pasuk and make it mean the exact opposite? And why? Why quote that? Why quote that pasuk? But maybe that's precisely the reason. You wonder if, at this time, there were these rebels. They also knew their Tanakh. And you wonder if they're looking at Tanakh and saying, we were in this position before, right? Remember? 700 years ago, 800 years ago, right? We were under siege also. And we stood strong and they left. And even the Romans, 4 years ago, we stood strong and they left. We should do the same thing. And they probably opened up their Tanakh and quoted Yeshayahu. Maybe, right? And so, this story, again, I don't know if we should take as historical fact that Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakai quoted this pasuk and this derasha to Vespasian, but the point is that the rabbis are telling it to us, right, and saying this pasuk we know the context, but Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakai says I know the context too, but I can read it another way, and so this derasha has a very significant political counter effect. Okay, we'll see this this discussion go further here. And he says, well, I tried to come earlier, but they wouldn't let me. Vespasian gives now mashal. He says, if there's a jar of honey and the snake wound around it, wouldn't you break the jar on the count of the snake? In other words, he's saying, unfortunately, because you have a jar of honey, that's Jerusalem. It's a beautiful city. I'd love to keep it, but the rebels are surrounding it, and so to destroy them, I have to destroy the city too. And he was silent. Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakai had nothing to say, right? He's bested. But Rav Yosef and Rabbi Akiva, generations later, they say, God turns sages back and makes nonsense of their knowledge. He should have answered them, we take tongues and take away the snake and kill it, and we leave the jar. Right? In other words, they should have dealt with the besiegers, probably the snake now is referring to the Romans, kill the Romans, and save the city. That's what he should have said. In other words, he should have told Vespasian, we're going to come and destroy you and kill you, and we're not letting you take the city. Okay. So it's probably not a coincidence that Rabbi Akiva is the one that's saying this, because he does it, right? 60 years later, he goes ahead and fights them. Now look at the context of this pasuk on the next page, source number 7. Yes. This is a very strong criticism of one rabbi to another. Not just that, it's his teacher's teacher, right? Rabbi Akiva's teacher's teacher. And they have diametrically different political views about how to deal with the Romans. And this Talmud is so interesting because it includes them both. Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakai, on the one hand, is the hero of the story, right? He's going to save everything. On the other hand, there's another comment. Rabbi Akiva says, God turns the minds of wise men backwards. Look at the context of the pasuk, also from Yeshayahu, source number 7. God is mefer otot badim v'kosumim yeholel, meshiv chachamim achol v'datam yisakel, mekim devar avdo ve'asat malachav yashlim, ha'omer Yerushalayim tushav u'larei Yehuda tibanena v'chorboteha akomem. God will annul the omens and diviners and augurs, I guess people who are saying that you're going to lose. Page 6. Yeshayahu 44. And he's going to confirm the word of my servant and messengers that says Jerusalem will be inhabited and they'll be rebuilt and everything will be fine, which is what Yeshayahu says. And so you see the context is, don't worry, everything will be good. And so when the Talmud quotes this against the Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakai, right, and knows the context too, and saying, why are you saying, why'd you give in? Why don't you stand up to the Romans and say, we're not listening to the false voices, we're going to listen to the prophets, to Yeshayahu, who says, you're gonna remain and live and be inhabited in Jerusalem. Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakai, it's your fault that we lost, that you gave in. You had a chance, you were with Vespasian, you could have done something more. And that goes on in the next scene. Just then a messenger came from Rome. He said, you're emperor because the previous one has died. And so Vespasian was putting on the shoe. This is this comedic scene. And he had one shoe on and one shoe off. And he heard this good news. And good news swells his feet. Now he couldn't get his shoe off. He couldn't get the other one on. And Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakai says, you have to get yourself back into a bad mood and bring someone in front of you who you don't like. And then he does that. And now he's in a bad mood and his foot stops swelling. He's able to put on the other shoe. And then he says, well, now I see that you're so wise. Why didn't you come out beforehand and make peace earlier? And he says, I told you already. I couldn't. And here, he says, well, nevertheless, I'm going back to Rome. I'm going to send someone else to take over this war. Ask me anything and I will give it to you. And the famous words, Ten li Yavne v'chachameha. He says, give me Yavne, another city, and the sages, so we can rebuild there and have a Sanhedrin, and even though we won't have a Bet HaMikdash, we'll have a new capital. And also the line of Rabban Gamliel, who's the Nasi, and doctors to heal the Beit Sadok, who was fasting for many years, and now he needs doctors to revive. And again, Rav Yosef and some say Rabbi Akiva bring the same pasuk. God turns sages backwards, makes nonsense of their knowledge. He should have said, let him off this time. Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakai should have told Vespasian, go away, right? Give us a chance and don't take Jerusalem. But he thought that perhaps Vespasian would not do that much, and then he wouldn't give him even a little. So better to ask for a little and get something than to ask for that much. But again, right, this is a very pointed controversy and criticism of Rabbi Akiva to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai, saying you could have done more, and therefore, since you could have and you didn't, the destruction of Jerusalem is your fault. It's ambiguous. And no, I don't see that. Because if you compare Avot Rabbi Natan's story, you'll see that none of that critique is there. In fact, it's we can go back on page 5. When Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai had spoken to them one day, and second day, and the third day, they didn't accept him on the right-hand column on page 5. He said, my sons arise and take me out of here. Here it's Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai's idea how to get out of it. Not Abba Sikras. And then he goes and he makes a coffin and he stands up and he opens the coffin and says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai says, what should I give you? And so immediately he offers him anything he wants, because in this story, he knows that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai is a friend already, right, from the spies that he had inside. And he asked him for a Yavne, and the study disciples only one thing, not the other things. He said, no, by the way, you're going to become emperor, and he quotes the same pasuk, Lebanon ba'adiri Paul. There's no criticism here by Rabbi Akiva, that's it. So you see in the Avot Rabbi Natan's story, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai is the hero, he does everything right. In the Bavli story, introduces all these, he should have done this, he had no answer to Vespasian, and all that criticism. Okay, allow me to add one more scene here. And that's from, remember Shevna? Right? Remember him? Shevna, the servant of the king, the scribe of the king, who was one of the people that was talking to. I have to show you one more thing. I showed you that already, right? Remember that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai was with the arrows going out of the city. Okay, so Shevna, here's another prophecy of Yeshayahu in Perek Kaf Bet. כה אמר אדוני אלוהים צבאות, לך בוא אל הסוכן הזה על שבנה אשר על הבית. He says, go to Shevna. God tells Yeshayahu, go to this guy Shevna, who's in charge of the house, but he has an upgrade now. Before he was a sofer. Now he's the chief of staff of King Chizkiyahu. מה לך פה ומי לך פה כי חשפת לך פה כבד חוצבה מרום כברו חוקקה בסלע משכן לו. And he says, what are you doing here, preparing for yourself a tomb? What happens in the outskirts of Jerusalem, archaeologists have found them today, there are tombs of royal officials. And while they were alive, they would prepare them so that then when they died, they could be there. And officials, here's an inscription of one of them in ancient Hebrew, and the name, unfortunately, is half missing. But the rest of it is something Yahu Asher al Habayit. And so the beginning of the name might very well be Shevanyahu Asher al Habayit. That might actually be his tomb. On this inscription it says, En po kesef v'zahav, no gold and silver here. Don't bother robbing it. It's just the bones of me and my wife, my maidservant. And so curses anyone who enters here. Okay, so we know that maybe his tomb, other tombs that are like it. Yeshayahu says, what do you think you're doing making this tomb for yourself? Hine Adonai metaltelcha taltela gaved ote ato sanof yisnofcha senefa kadur al eres rachavat yadayim shamma tamut v'shamma markevot kibodecha kelon bet adonecha. He says, I am going to wrap you up like a ball and kick you out. And I'm going to bring someone else to be in your stead. The Tanakh does not say what Shevna did wrong. And so all the commentaries are wondering, right, what did he do? Beforehand in the chapter, there are people inside the walls are making a party because they're not worried, they're not praying. Maybe Shevna was involved with that. It's not clear. But Chazal have given interpretation. So the Chazal say, "My kesher d'shaim." What does it mean that you shouldn't be part of an evil group? Shevna havadarish bitle sarabuta. Shevna was a Tamid Chacham. He used to teach, and he had 130,000 people come to his class. King Chizkiah had only 110,000 people come to his class. So there's some competition between the two. When Sancheriv came and besieged Jerusalem, Shevna wrote a note, and he shot on an arrow into the enemy's camp, saying Shevna and his followers are willing to make peace. Chizkiah does not want to make peace. See what he's doing? Right? He had more people in his class anyway. I don't know what he was so upset about, right? But he's ratting on Chizkiah, who doesn't want to make peace. So thus it is written, for lo, the wicked bend the bow and make their arrow ready for the string. So Chizkiah was afraid. He said, maybe he's right. Maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to go with the majority who want to give up the siege and make peace with Ashur. Since that's true, so we should surrender. Therefore, the Navi, Yeshayahu, comes and says, no, don't go with them. It's kesher d'shaim. Don't follow them. Stay strong. Okay. So here, Shevna, this doesn't say this in the Tanakh, but it says Shevna used to write things on arrows and send message to the Assyrians saying, we want to make peace. Sound familiar? To what? Rabbi Ben Zakai, as described in Avot Rabbi Natan, also is inside the walls, shooting arrows, saying, we want to make peace. You see what's going on here? It's very subtle, right? But since we already know that explicitly Rabbi Yosef or Rabbi Akiva are using Yeshayahu, Pesukim from Yeshayahu, to criticize Rabbi Yohanan Ben Zakai, saying you shouldn't have made peace, so maybe this retelling of this Shevna story in the model of Rabbi Yohanan Ben Zakai is another way of the Talmud saying the same thing. Okay. What we don't have time for is the last page, which is about Josephus. There's another story that Josephus tells about himself. When he was up in the north and under siege, he managed to escape and meet Vespasian and have a conversation with him, which is parallel to the Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai story and making peace. But to summarize what we've seen, right, we started with Zachor and talking about how you can write a history, and so here's all the dates and things that happened. But when you think about memory, it's about what's the relevance of all that history for every event that we are confronted with. And so already in the time of Chazal, when they're under siege of the Romans, they're thinking about what happened 500 years ago in the time of the Babylonians, what happened even before that when we were under siege with Ashur. Should we follow the same model that they did then? And many of the people were saying, yes, we should. And we should stay strong and fight against the Romans. And that's what Rabbi Akiva was teaching. However, Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakai, they know they're quoting those same Pesukim, so he re-looks at those Pesukim and makes a derasha on it to turn them around to the opposite and says, we're not in the same situation, and you have to judge each situation by himself. Instead, look towards Yirmiyah, who says, make peace with the Babylonians, and everything will be good. And so they're using the different models of history, they're reliving them as a kind of living memory to figure out what the best strategy is for their own time. And I think that today, when we are lucky enough to have again the state of Israel, I think it's essential for us to go back and look at our history, not just as ancient past, but as living memories, and think about what are the parallels between their experience and our experience in dealing with other countries, in dealing with internal factions, and hopefully we won't make the same mistakes that they did back then 2,000 years ago and 2,500 and 2,700 years ago, but rather we will follow the wisdom of our sages and of the Nevi'im, and through that, we will have a great state of Israel that will prosper for many, many years.